Hello everyone and welcome to day 22 of Vlogmas. We are currently travelling to Cornwall and seeing as you don't want to be spending 6 hours over 6 hours a day over 2 days, 12 hours in total in the car with us and our children because yeah, who would? This is a pre-recorded video so that I could still get a fun video up each day of Vlogmas. So I thought for today that I would talk books. I am going to go over my top 10 books of 2024. Well, I say top 10 books, some of them are actually series, so top 10 books / series of 2024 and share them with you basically. Book chatting has become a new thing to my channel this year. I've always done like little vlogs during Vlogmas and stuff like that, talking about my favourite books and things, but this year I introduced my Let's Talk Books videos where I kind of talk about my reading months and things like that, and it's been really fun and it's been really well received as well, so I'm definitely going to continue that going into 2025. And I'm excited to talk more books because it's a love of mine and I don't get to talk about it enough. So, as I said, I'm going to just talk about my top 10 books / series for the year. And yeah, that's it. So settle in, grab yourself a cup of tea and some crafting and settle in. Also have your like Goodreads, this is what I have to do when I'm watching book videos. I have my Goodreads like on my phone ready to search books and add them to a list of books that I want to read, because there's undoubtedly always ones that I'm like, ooh, actually that sounds really good. Hopefully you find that with this. Anyway, in no particular order, I think they're in the order that I read them, maybe, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. I just went through my book journal and picked out kind of the top ones that I've given the highest number of stars to throughout the year, and then narrowed that down to the 10, sorry, that I felt were my favourites, basically. So, starting off with Bookshops and Bonedust by Travis Baldree. This is the prequel to Legends and Lattes. So in Legends and Lattes you follow Viv, who is an orc barbarian. She lives in a kind of high fantasy D&D setting kind of world. And she is, in Legends and Lattes, she has retired from the adventuring life and she's decided to set up a coffee shop. In Bookshops and Bonedust, which is the prequel, we see Viv at the beginning of her adventuring career. She has been injured and she's basically sent off to a seaside town to recuperate, and she struggles a little bit with that. She wants to be in the adventure. She doesn't want to be left behind. But while she's there, she meets the owner of a bookshop and a baker, and she meets a whole crew of friends and solves a mystery. And yeah, it's a really fun, comforting kind of read. I'd say this one is a little bit more in terms of the stakes. It's a little bit higher stakes than Legends and Lattes, but it is still that like proper low stakes, comforting kind of read. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what Travis Baldree comes out with next, because both Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bonedust have been right up there in my best books of the last couple of years. Then we have a series. So the trilogy, this is the Farseer Trilogy by Hobb, which starts with Assassin's Apprentice, and then it's Assassin's Quest and Royal Assassin, I think, are the 3 books in the trilogy. And I came to Hobb at the beginning of this year. It's the first time I've ever picked up these books, and I've absolutely loved them. I've read 5 of her books this year. I'm hoping to get to the final book in the Liveship Traders trilogy at the beginning of next year, and I have absolutely loved them. In the Farseer trilogy, we follow Fitz Chivalry. Have I forgotten his surname? Anyway, we follow Fitz. Fitz is the illegitimate son of the king, he's the illegitimate son of one of the princes. So he's basically the king's illegitimate grandson. Anyway, it's It's all a complicated family tree. And you, at the beginning of the first book in the trilogy, you meet him at a very young age. He's about 6 or something like that. And he's taken from his family, or his family have given him up. It was a while ago, something like that. And he's come to the castle, he's come to Buckkeep to live in the castle. And the king has decided that he will be trained to become an assassin because they need to make him useful. And you basically follow him throughout the series, the trilogy. You're following him from the age of about 6 in the first book, right up until he's probably early 20s maybe by the end of the 3rd book in the trilogy. And it's very much character-driven fantasy. So there's lots of exploration, lots of kind of little missions he has to go on and stuff like that. But it's very much about the characters and the people. And it's brilliant. It's one of those ones I really can't tell you too much about because you really need to experience it for yourself, if that makes sense. But it is an absolutely brilliant trilogy. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's part of the Realm of the Elderlings series, which is one of Robin Hobb's, I guess, I don't really know, is it her own series or is it one? I think she's done other books. I don't know. Anyway, it's broken up into lots of different trilogies, basically. So the Live Ship Traders is the 2nd trilogy, and that follows a different group of characters, but within the same world. But yeah, there we go. Moving on to book number 3. I suspect this video may come over 20 minutes. We'll see how we go. Again, this is another series, and I listened to most of these on audiobook. And that is the D.I.Callanach series by Helen Fields. It started with Perfect Remains and moves through a whole host of books. I think there are maybe 8 books in the series. I would highly recommend the audiobooks. If you have an Everand subscription, they are on there. They are probably on other audiobook providers. But the audiobook that I listened to on Everand was brilliant. The narrator was fantastic because you follow D.I.Callanach, who is French, part Scottish. So he used to work for Interpol. He had to leave Interpol due to some difficult circumstances that do play a part in the series. And he has come to Edinburgh and he has joined the, I've forgotten what it's called, the Major Investigation Team. I knew it was like MIT. It was the Major Investigation Team in Edinburgh, who basically are a homicide police force. They look into all of the big crimes, and this is a series that follows mainly serial killers. And he's come to Scotland, and it's him joining this team, and it's very you really get to know the characters. That's one of the things I think across the series that's done really, really well. But each book follows a different serial killer. There's usually you often get a little bit of an insight from the serial killer as well, which I really liked. And yeah, they're brilliant. They're gory. They're gory, but they are some of the best crime books I have read in a long, long, long time. And yeah, the whole series wraps up in One for Sorrow, which was brilliant. Probably, yeah, right, the best book of the series, definitely. Right, we'll move on to the book number 4, which was The Whistling by Rebecca Netley. This is a horror, this is a horror book, basically. You follow Elspeth, who has left her life behind to become a nanny to a disturbed child on a remote Scottish island. This little girl's brother has died in mysterious circumstances. Their previous nanny has died in mysterious circumstances. And when she gets there, strange things start to happen. She hears whistling. She starts to see things in the windows in the dark. There are stories that are kind of coming from the townsfolk and things like that. And it was brilliant. It was creepy, but I really loved the atmosphere. I loved the story. I think it helped that I read it while we were on the Isle of Mull, so we were on a remote Scottish island while I was reading it. But yeah, absolutely recommend it to everyone. I have got a copy of The Black Feathers, which is the next book by Rebecca Netley, and I'm so excited to get to that one because if it's anything as good as The Whistling, It's going to be brilliant. Right, next we have Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. This is, I guess, just literary fiction. I never quite know if it doesn't have a very set genre. I never quite know where to put it. But we follow, maybe historical fiction actually. It's probably historical fiction. Anyway, we follow Elizabeth Zott, who is a female chemist in the 1960s, in a time when her colleagues don't really think she's capable of anything other than being a housewife, basically. She is a brilliant chemist, absolutely brilliant chemist, but they don't respect her, and she, can't get any respect. And then somehow she ends up hosting a TV show, but when a TV cookery show. But when she does it, she refuses to make it just a bland housewives cooking show, and she teaches the housewives the chemistry of cooking. And it's very much a kind of feminist, women can be better than what they're kind of told they can do, kind of thing. I don't really know how to explain it beyond that, but it was really, really good. The characters were brilliant, and I just really enjoyed the story. Elizabeth is an interesting person. I then wanted to mention the Wayward Children series by Seanan and McGuire. Now, I'm not going to pick out one book as a out of this. I have read, I think, 9 of the books in this series, something like that this year. Again, I've listened to them all on audiobook. They are super short. They are like 2-hour audiobooks. And the audiobooks are brilliant for these as well. They're really, really good. But this basically follows the concept. It's a portal fantasy, and it follows the concept that children sometimes disappear. They're sometimes whisked away to other worlds where they belong, but then sometimes they're sent back for other reasons. And when they are sent back, they struggle to kind of cope with no longer being in their true land, I guess. And we have Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, and this is a school where all of these disappeared children can come together and kind of cope with life, basically. What I really like about this one is that each book is completely different. So sometimes the books are based at the school, sometimes you'll get a backstory for a new character, sometimes you'll get like a new character randomly introduced, and you're a bit like, oh, I don't know quite where this fits in, but then the next book you'll be like, ah, right, okay, this all makes sense now. And yeah, it's really, really well kind of interwoven between the different books, and things like that. I've just managed to spill tea on my lap. Anyway. So yeah, again, brilliant, brilliant series, and I've really enjoyed them this year. We've got 4 more books. So the next one was The Women by Kristin Hannah. This has to be my standout book of the year. I sobbed during this book. It is absolutely brilliant. Again, historical fiction. You follow Frankie, who is 20 years old, and she is this kind of privileged woman living with her family in South California, and her brother goes off to war. It is Vietnam, and he goes off to war, and she decides, well, if he can go off to war, why shouldn't I do my bit? And she signs up to be an army nurse, and she goes right into the deep of Vietnam. And the first half of the book, you follow her life in Vietnam and the experiences she has in Vietnam, and it is harrowing, and it is gruesome, and it is very, very, very dark in places, but brilliant. And then the second half of the book, you follow her after she's come home. And you follow the fact that the world didn't think that there were women at Vietnam. She wasn't seen as a vet. She wasn't, like, all of her struggles, basically her post-traumatic stress was ignored because women didn't go to Vietnam. So therefore she didn't need the support of the veteran societies. She didn't need the support of all these things. She wasn't there. And yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. I've read The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah before, and again, that was a standout book for me the year I read that. And I have a few more Kristin Hannah books on my shelf, and I am both excited and slightly nervous to get to them. But I remember finishing The Women, putting it down and just thinking to myself, I really just want to pick that up and go straight back into it again. It was that good. But yeah, definitely not something light-hearted. It had me in tears, but it was brilliant. Sticking with the historical fiction, we also have In Memoriam by Alice Winn. Again, this is another one that is quite dark and harrowing in places. This is a queer romance to some extent, but mixed in with historical fiction. So we follow Henry Gaunt and Sydney Elwood, who are English public school boys, and they join World War One, basically. They go off to World War One to join it because all of their friends are doing it and they're too young. They lie about their age, but they want to go off and have the glory of World War One. And they end up in the trenches, and it is just childhood friend lost after childhood friend lost. But then at the same time, there is this gentle romance between the two of them, who like finding ways, I guess, to cope in the midst of all of the chaos and everything like that. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. I couldn't put it down. I read it during the summer when we were in Cornwall on holiday, and I literally took it everywhere with me. I was reading it in the car, in between going places, and I just could not put it down. It was so good, but another one that will definitely make you cry. Okay, then we're going to go to a complete change of pace, and we have another horror. So this is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. And this is, I don't even know how to really describe this. And it's not one you can say much about. So we follow Eve. Eve and her girlfriend Charlie have just bought a house with the intention of doing it up and selling it on. And one evening, Eve is at home alone. Charlie is, I don't know, she's doing stuff and she's not back yet. And there's a knock on the door. And she opens the door to find a family there, and the father of the family says, "We used to live here, could we come in and have a look around?" Now, Eve really doesn't want to let them in, but she's very much a people pleaser who struggles to make big decisions on her own. She doesn't want to rock the boat, so she ends up letting them in and regretting it because things start to go strange. First of all, she can't seem to get rid of them. They leave, but then things happen, so they end up coming back and she can't get rid of them. And then strange things start to happen around the house. And then Eve can't quite decide whether she is going mad or whether things are actually happening. And it gets more twisted and complicated. And for most of the book, you don't have a clue what's going on. Even by the time you've got to the end, you kind of still don't really know what's going on. But that's one of the things that for me made it really, really brilliant. There's also a fun little element of Morse code to solve as you're going through, and you get like these little documents dotted in every so often, which kind of help build a picture, but at the same time, you're not quite sure what the picture is until you get to the end. And I really, really enjoyed it. It was one of the best kind of horror books that I have read over the last few years. It was, brilliant. And then the final book. So the final book is again historical fiction, and that was The Diamond Eye by Kate Quinn. I listened to this one on audiobook whilst I was in the middle of packing Advents, and it was the perfect audiobook because it really, really kept me hooked while I was doing the monotonous task of bagging up all those individual Advent minis. This one is historical fiction set around World War II, I believe. I think it was World War II. I can never remember whether things are World War II or World War I. No, this was definitely World War II. And we follow Mila, who is a Russian woman who she trains Before the war breaks out, she trained as a sniper. She got her gun license as a sniper because she wanted to prove to her ex-husband that she could be enough for their son, basically. But then the war breaks out and she ends up kind of getting recruited because of her sharpshooter skills, her skills as a sniper. She ends up getting recruited to join the sniper team and become part of the war. And we follow, again, it's kind of a book of two halves, really. The first half of the book, we follow Mila as going through the war. So again, it can be quite harrowing in places because you're getting real kind of experiences from the front lines and things like that. But then the second half of the book, we follow Mila as she is kind of put into a delegation of Russians who have gone to America to meet with the president and to meet with Eleanor Roosevelt and to try and convince the Americans to provide them aid during the war. And it's just really interesting seeing it from that perspective as well, and her experiences over there as this kind of Russian, I don't know, a lot of them don't believe that she is who she says. They think she's just propaganda. They can't believe she has as many kills as she does, and they think she's just a pretty girl sent over there to be propaganda, basically. And it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It's not a perspective of World War II that I've read before. I've never really read anything based around kind of the Russian involvement in World War II. And it was just really, really interesting. I love books based around World War II and things like that. That type of historical fiction I always really, really enjoy. World War I or World War II. So yeah, it was a good one. So there we go. Before I start rambling and going off on major tangents, they are my top 10 books / series of the last year. It'll be interesting to see next year what top 10 we get then. I'm excited for a new year of reading. Anyway, I am going to leave you with Arthur, maybe, to do joke of the day, and I will see you all again tomorrow. Bye.
It's time for Joke of the Day! What has 5 toes and isn't your foot?
I don't know. What has 5 toes and isn't my foot?
My foot.